Well, one question we frequently come across is should we as a local congregation have a budget? And if so, how do we use it? Well, that's a good question. You know, there's a lot to be gained by having a budget. It's almost like asking the question, when you're buying a new car, should we get the one that has a speedometer on it or not? Well, in a certain aspect, you have to know how fast you're running and how fast money's coming in and how fast money's going out in order to be a good steward. And so you don't want to get into, you're not going to have somebody with a radar gun pointing at you unless you get into a cash flow issue necessarily. But that could be the issue. I mean, you're not going to get dinged for a few miles over or a few miles under, but you're gonna get into a situation where you could really have a real issue from a stewardship standpoint and how you handle congregational funds. And so you need to realize this is a strategic map. It's a map, and on the road of life there are sometimes detours. And so you might not go exactly like the route that you had planned out on the map, but you're taking a best guess effort of estimating your receipts that are coming in and contributions, and then making a best effort to understand what expenses are going to be made. Do you set it and forget it? I think there was a commercial about that. No, it's not something that you really just set one time. We've done the budget, so everybody knows it, and we forget about it, and we don't address budgeting again until we come back to the same time next year. This is something that you need timely reporting. It doesn't have to be the world's greatest reporting. It doesn't even necessarily have to be balanced to the penny. You're looking for a big picture. How close are we on our budget? And it's something that's really needed in order for the congregation to be a good steward from that aspect. Providing a general guideline for category by category expense. This is something that you'll use probably more internally. From a standpoint of working with staff in the congregation. It enhances the communication with staff so they have an understanding. But you also need to communicate this is not a right or entitlement to funds. I had a chance at break to talk with somebody from a government that had a government type relationship, and there, we get into a sense of, these funds have been designated for this particular purpose and we have to use those funds. Well, that's not necessarily the case. There needs to be flexibility as dynamics shift. You never know if there's going to be a situation where the contributions take a dive or contributions accelerate. Those realities are all too real from looking over the past couple of years of the economic stress situation that we saw many families in. And we just have to try to budget and proactively review that budget as we are going through the year on that. A more specific guide for overall expenses. This is really a bottom line analysis of how is the congregation doing in contributions versus expenses. Is it taking more than it's spending, or is it spending more than it's receiving? And this may be something that you want to share with the congregation so the congregation understands. It may be something that's used as part of your generosity education that your church is doing. We've got some great generosity education resources on the website as well. But kind of an overall expense, and Dan's going to talk a little bit more about transparency as a congregation and what are some aspects you want to look at there. And just remember, flexibility as revenue and other factors dictate is going to be necessary. You've got to be able to be pretty nimble, and that's why the timeliness is so important in this process, so you can make real-life decisions. If you don't have something figured out until a year later or 6 months later or even a couple months later, it could be already too late. It's like the guy from Titanic yelling, "Iceberg behind us." Well, it was too late by that point. You've got to be able to adjust in a very flexible way.